Hello everyone, Miss Carrie here. Today we're going to be creating an adorable popping flap Valentine using a few items from This Calls for Confetti. When you pull this little tab, a lovable Bigfoot pops out. How cute is that? For this project, I'm using the Love Bigfoot die and the Christmas Post 6x6 paper pad. In my previous video, I shared how I often use leftover holiday patterns for Valentine projects. This one has some great reds, grays, and pinks that are perfect for Valentine cards, and it gives you an excuse to use up some of those supplies in your collection. As I create today's project, I'll bring in a few additional supplies. As always, I encourage you to use what you have in your collection, but if you would like a list of the items I'm using, one can be found in the description below, along with my affiliate link to the This Calls for Confetti shop. Let's get started with the project. For your base, you're going to need a piece of white cardstock that's cut at 5 inches by 7 3/4. The inside flap is cut at 3 3/8 by 6 inches. The little mechanism piece that you're going to be using is cut at 2 by 2. These are the basic pieces for the card. The inside flap of my card is going to be red, so I'm going to trade that out. We are going to start by adding some score lines and cut lines to these card pieces. I don't own a scoreboard, so I'm going to use my paper trimmer with a bone folder. I'm going to start with the card base. I'm placing the short side at the top of the paper cutter, and I'm going to score this at 3/8 of an inch. I'm going to flip this over and do the same on the opposite side. I'm going to place the long side against the top and score this at 3 1/8. I'm going to be removing this portion of the card base here. You can do this with a paper cutter or a craft knife. I'm going to use a pair of scissors and cut right up the side here. I am going to cut a few angles to make folding a little easier. When this card is assembled, it does measure 4 1/4 inches wide, so it will fit inside a standard A2 size envelope. That's all that needs to be done for the card base. We're going to go ahead and score the flap piece. This is scored at 2 3/4. The last piece is the mechanism. This is going to be scored at 3/8 of an inch on 2 of the sides. I'm going to go ahead and score it on one side, then I'll flip it over and score it on the opposite side. All right, that's all of the scoring and cutting that needs to be done. Let's go ahead and add our pattern paper pieces. This portion of the card base is going to be folded down, and the 2 side flaps are going to fold towards the inside. This here is the front of your card and the part that you're going to want to decorate. I'm going to add a plaid pattern to this. When this card base is closed, the only part that's going to show is this lower piece here. I do suggest that you not add any paper or decorations to the inside of the card. The more layers you add, the more difficult it's going to be to work that mechanism. I'm going to adhere this little small strip near the bottom portion of the card. The last item I'm going to add is a little 1/2 inch paper strip right across the top here. I'll add a few more decorative elements after I assemble the card. So our card base is all finished. Let's go ahead and decorate that inside flap. This is going to have our Bigfoot. This inside flap has two sections. You're going to want the larger portion to be at the bottom because this little section here will stick out from inside the card. That's what you're going to pull when this flap pulls out to reveal the Bigfoot. Before we add the Sasquatch to the inside of the flap, I'm going to add a little bit of pattern paper to the outside. When you pull out this pop-up flap, this little part of cardstock is going to show. I felt that it needed a little bit of decoration, so I'm adding some pattern paper here. All right, now that that's in place, we're going to adhere our Bigfoot to the inside of the pop-up flap. Once you have decided where your Sasquatch is going to sit, we're going to mark the part where the fold sits. So just grab yourself a pencil and make some little marks. Before we adhere the Bigfoot in place, we're going to create a score line. I'm just going to place this on my paper trimmer and use my bone folder to create a score mark. You're going to want to use a good, strong adhesive to add the Bigfoot in place. This is going to be a moving part of the card, and you would hate for him to fall off when somebody's opening and closing this little flap mechanism. All right, so now we're going to work on our little mechanism. This has already been scored, and we're going to fold this to create a Z fold. One fold is going to be a mountain fold, the other is going to be a valley, and we have this little Z shape once we're done. Now, my husband helped me build the original card. He discovered that the cardstock rolls inside of the card. So we found that it was best to loosen the fibers of this cardstock a bit before we adhered it in place. I'm using a bone folder and running it along the edge. This is just going to break down those fibers and make that internal mechanism roll much easier once it's adhered inside the card. Now we need to adhere this in place. I'm going to fold that inside flap. My printed paper is facing up and the fold is sitting at the top. I'm going to add some glue to this little flap here. You do want to use a really strong adhesive because this is a moving mechanism and you don't want it to come apart when that flap is moving in and out of the card. I'm going to place this in the center, lining up the top of the little mechanism with the fold. Make sure that these are centered and lined up straight. Now we're going to take this folded piece and place it on the inside of our card. We're going to move this down so that we can line up the base of the card with that little flap that we just adhered in place. You want to make sure that everything is lined up and centered before you adhere this. I'm going to add some adhesive to this flap here. Then we're going to fold the top portion of the card base down and hold it in place. This is going to take a few minutes to dry. Once the glue has dried, we're going to carefully lift this flap, and then we'll fold in the two side pieces and adhere them in place. Once again, I'm using liquid adhesive to make sure everything is nicely secured. I'm going to fold these in and carefully fold this over and close it tight. All right, let's go ahead and finish this up with a few decorative elements. When I made my original card, I realized that I did not give the receiver any instructions, like the fact that they needed to pull this out to reveal the pop-up portion of the card. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little tab real quick. I'm using a circle that I've cut in half. You can cut out a circle shape with a punch, a die, or a cutting machine. I'm just adhering the two halves together here on the pull-out portion of the card. And then I'm going to write the word pull so that the receiver knows to pull this to reveal the Bigfoot inside. I'm using a white gel pen. And because this is a Valentine, I'm also going to add a few little hearts. All right, let's add a few little decorations to the front of our card. I have a little white cardstock square that I've added some pen work to. I have also cut out a black leaf using the Autumn Artesian die set. I'm going to cut this in half. I'll place the 3 larger leaves over on the left side. And then I'm going to cut these smaller leaves in half and layer them on the opposite side. On top of the white square, I'm going to add some little hearts that I cut from pattern paper. I'm just going to pop these in place, and then I'll bring a little bit of twine to this and adhere it at the top. I'm going to let this dry a moment, and then I'll bring in some black confetti. I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and then I'll share the completed card with you. This interactive card is going to be so much fun to give on Valentine's Day. When this little flap is pulled, our Bigfoot pops out. You can add a sentiment to this or write your Valentine wishes. I want to thank you for joining me today. If you have any questions about this project or supplies I used, feel free to post those in the comments below. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.